And welcome to Hero Power. This is episode 155, and we have such a great show lined up for you this week. I'm Avantes, and as always, I'm joined by my cadre of co-hosts, starting with Zeroshio.
What is up, gang?
Joining us again on a semi-regular basis is Versika.
That intro just never ceases to amaze me how awkward it is. So what is up, gang?
Yeah, and of course, the one and only Man-at-Arms.
What's there going on, man?
See, somebody's in the spirit. But before we get to that, guys, we have got a super special guest joining us this week. You know him as the man with the impeccable beard. He is Hearthstone player and caster. ThatsAdmirable. Welcome, sir.
I feel like Man-at-Arms needs to have more karate moves in that introduction. I mean, Matt at arms, like that's like the perfect kung fu style right there. Just karate chop.
Well, they finally gave me my card this last set on Boomsday.
Extra
the priest
arms?
card.
Oh, the extra arms.
There you go.
Matt at extra arms.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then Matt at more arms. Yeah, it's
exactly.
Like it's the Jekyll and Hyde personality thing going on.
More arms is actually my son.
Okay. That makes sense. That's how biology works. So yeah, it makes sense. Stop me there.
Yeah. So we have a full house tonight, guys. We are super excited. There was no way we couldn't have everybody on this super special episode joining us. So we're going to jump right into it because we have a lot to cover. But first of all, again, welcome to Admirable. So we've got some, we reached out to our listener community and we were like, guys, we've got this once in a lifetime chance to have the man himself on the show. What would you like to know? And so let's just start at the top. So what or whom influenced you into wanting to become a professional caster?
So I think I fell into it just kind of by happenstance, honestly. Hearthstone, when it came out, I'd been playing cards for, my whole life basically. And I've been trying to be a pro gamer for a lot of that. And sometimes it's been successful. Sometimes it is not. Poker's probably been the biggest bulk of my success, I would say, where like actual pro gaming is concerned. And I was like sitting at the card shop one day. I was working like an $8 an hour job or what have you. And I was like, man, something's got to give. I got to get out of this. Like $8 an hour forever. This is not going to work. And this guy Grant was always watching Twitch at the store, and I'd paid some attention to Twitch, but whatever, it's Twitch. I think Own 3D was still around or something like that at the time. I don't know, maybe they'd just gone out. I don't really remember. Point is, Grant was watching Hearthstone, and I was like, "What is this game?" And he's like, "Oh, it's this game Hearthstone. I really want to try it. It's really cool." And he's like kind of walking me through it, and I learned by just watching the rules, and I was like, all right, well, I got to get my hands on one of these beta keys then. So, unlike pretty much everyone else in the world, the first thing I did was go to ebay.com and see if there's one for sale, which there's like, thousands of them for sale. It's eBay and it's a beta key they just give out to people. So I started playing the game and I started streaming. The streaming was working out, and I eventually got asked to cast an event, like an online event. And they were like, we'll pay you $250. I was like, oh my gosh, $250 for 2 days of work. That is insane. Like, I love talking. That's all I do. And I'd worked in improv when I was, going through school, and I worked a little bit in radio outside of that. It was when I was younger, just not too long. I would say maybe like a year and a half of radio and like some 2 a.m. talk radio show. And so it just kind of felt really natural to me, like understanding like how to talk to a microphone. And as right as I bumped the stand, of course, as I'm saying that, and just being able to explain things in ways that help people understand what's going on. It took me a long time to realize that not everyone is as into cards as I am. It's been like my entire life. So I used to just be like way over the top, like talking about really complicated things that people just aren't thinking about. Like they're looking at the very base level of it and just helping them understand the momentum and like what's really happening. that was really the early on casting for me. And then as I started to realize that it was a much harder job than I thought it was, I think that's really what influenced me a lot, was that playing is very difficult. There's no question about it. But casting, it's very difficult as well. It's just a very different set of challenges where you do need to have some knowledge that's in depth, but you don't need to be like at the very tip top level of professionalism in terms of play to be able to cast it. But you do have to be in a very different thing, understanding like where people look at things and how they understand them, and being able to bring that to them in a light that they don't normally see, or that takes a long time to develop that skill. And I think the biggest point of it was, if I had had someone to really unlock that passion in me when I was younger, how much more would I have done with cards, or how much more would I have gotten into it, or how much more quickly would it have been accelerated. And so to me, it's like that was a big part of it, was maybe somewhere down the road I unlock that passion that someone had inside of them that they don't have an outlet for. And so I think that's one of the biggest reasons for why I wanted to be a caster, was to help people who are not old and bitter and need to pay mortgage really unlock that passion within themselves and pursue what they really want to pursue.
That's really awesome. We were kind of talking before the show. A lot of people know that I'm an innkeeper, and I've worked as an admin at a lot of high level events, HCTs and PAXs and things like that. And I've gotten to see you guys do your job up close firsthand, and I have nothing but admiration for the job you guys do as casters. I mean, it, like you said, it is a tough gig, but you guys do it so well, you make it look easy.
Yeah, in fact, you doubt that it's hard when they have the So You Think You Can Cast challenge come around. I mean, try really doing that, and doing it at even close to the level that you guys pull off on a regular basis. It's hard. It's one of the hardest things I ever did was trying to put together one. I didn't even have the guts to send it in when I was done. It's rough.
It feels like just exhausting mostly. Like, yeah. I feel like the job, like for all, like once you're at a certain level and you practice with it, it is, there are aspects of it that are quite easy. But just like constantly doing it. And if you're not having, the greatest time, or you're not feeling well or what have you, like I can't just sit out there and kind of, have that look on my face where it's dazed and confused. A lot of times I don't sleep because I get anxious and excited about tournaments. And so like there's so many days I've been up for, 24, 30 hours and have to go out and cast. And I'm like, this is match one.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
So talking about, your days and going into matches, tell us kind of like, what's a normal week like for you going into something like HCT?
So there's like two different things. Like for playoffs, it's I'd say much more loosely structured, where you don't necessarily know what you're going to see coming in the next round. It's Swiss pairings. So the week leading up to that, we get handed a research package. Big shout out to J Billy B for helping us put those together. Without J Billy B, we would sound stupid so much because of how much effort he puts into like compiling a bunch of numbers and facts about people and so on and so forth, and making it very organized. So without J Billy B, we would sound much more stupid than we already do. A lot of it's just being able to navigate that very quickly and draw the interesting stories from it. Should you compare and contrast? Should you like talk about their current form and what's going forward? Like, what story are you going to tell about a player once they're on camera and once they're actually playing the game? To me, that's like one of the biggest things to pay attention to. So having like that research packet is a really big point of that. It's about getting in the right groove, that you're understanding certain matchups. And when you look at that deck list packet and someone has a wacky lineup, you're always like, God, shut up. Like, you have to play so many games of Hearthstone. For me personally, anyway, I have to play so many games of Hearthstone to really understand what's going on. And so, amongst the casters, it's always a big point of pride to be able to, pick the player who's going to end up winning. We have the ease of seeing deck lists and then picking which one has the best lineup out of the field. They have to do it ahead of time. And that's really the hard part about that. But we take great pride in being able to spot that. And it's not always as easy as you think it is, because sometimes the matchup doesn't work the way you pictured it, or, they have a different perspective of it, or people ban a different way than you would expect them to. Or even just the matchup's not as good as you thought it was. Like, someone you were practicing with just wasn't playing it that well that day. For me, it's very stressful because I love understanding what makes those matchups work, and I really want to know it. Like, just deep down in my heart of hearts, if I can't explain a matchup in like 2 minutes, I'm like, I don't think I know this matchup. And to me, that's like a really deep, personally hurting feeling. So like the week before, like the playoffs, it's pretty chaotic. You get a lot of information all at once, and you got to blast it all in there. For championships, it's much more structured, but it is a lot more work. We have to sit down with all 16 of the players and interview them. There's a translator involved in a lot of those interviews, and we have to develop the stories as they go along. At Champs, we get the liberty of having a lot of the stories kind of tell themselves. Players who get there tend to have some pretty good stuff on their resume, but sometimes they don't. And when they don't, and they're a newcomer, I just really personally hate telling the story of it's a newcomer. I'm like, okay, well, what's the bigger story here? What else can I talk about, and what else can I make this interesting for, and really draw a parallel with? And I think that's where a lot of my anxiety comes from in a broadcast. Is like, I'm racking my brain trying to think of stories, and there's always a bunch of options, but I want it to be something like spectacular, and you can't always get that. So, I'd say like they're both pretty stressful, but for very different reasons. That's like just leading up to playoffs and champs and such like that. Like tour stops are much more loosely structured. It depends on the production you're going to work with. Sometimes you get a lot of information, sometimes you don't. And from there it can be quite stressful or not stressful at all, just depending on the kinds of stories that are coming up. At Orange County, for instance, that event felt like a breeze to me because just every single matchup was so strong. You had everything in the world at your fingertips that you wanted to talk about, and it was always interesting, and you always saw a lot of high-level play. The weeks that I don't have that work, however, I'm struggling to find things to do that occupy my time. It's like trying to stream and trying to, I do a lot of collectible stuff as well. I'd say every caster leads a very different life in what their typical week is. I don't think the others stress out quite as much as I do, which, you might have guessed just at the rapid pace of my speed of talk and how intense I seem to always be all the time. Maybe I'm a bit too high strung and I need to check my blood pressure. That's another possibility about this too. But it's a lot of fun, and I really wouldn't have it any other way. I love casting, and it's what I want to keep doing.
So talking specifically about, you mentioned it's challenging when you have a newcomer, and it's also challenging when you have somebody that brings a very odd lineup. So how challenging was casting somebody like Hatul, who kind of falls in both categories, where he brings really weird lineups and he's a newcomer with a very outgoing personality?
I think the personality made it, at least to me, easier because I felt like I had very distinct things to talk about. First, I can see some spots where it could be really difficult because he's so opinionated and straightforward. Like, he's very much like me. Opinions presented as fact. That being said, I disagree with a lot of his opinions, naturally. He felt like he was easier to cast because he was just so unique to me. Like, you didn't really need to tell much of a story because he was the story. So I just kind of let it roll how it was. I think that once he was on the main stage, he made, a number of errors. But I think that's going to be partially because of the way that you bring your decks as well. I honestly think his warrior deck was pretty good. I think the rest of the lineup was not so much. But he's continued to put up numbers, and that's really like the thing to look at to me. It's like he had a reasonable finish at the tour stop in Orange County, and I think he had a top 100 finish on ladder that same season as well. I think he is quite a strong player, I think, but everyone's first time on stage, it's very different than what they think it is. Everyone sees the error, they go, "Oh my God, how could you do that?" And I'm like, well, how about you're thinking about the active $8,000 that are on the line literally right now, while you have a bunch of white noise funneling into your head so you can't hear anything, and a bunch of lights around you so you can't see how the audience is reacting. Those two things tend to influence how you approach a matchup. So for Hatul, I think it was quite easy because of his, very loud personality. I think if he had been more quiet and less, outspoken, it would have been much more difficult.
Yeah. So you kind of touched on this a little bit already, but what kind of challenges have you seen transitioning from being a competitive player to a full-time caster?
Well, I was a player pretty early on, and I definitely would be wrong to say it wasn't easier then. I had a lot of experience to guide me, and even though I made a ton of errors during that time, and I would bring back decks a lot, it's still, in my opinion, much easier. So I think I got into it at about the right time, where I still think I could compete, but it is a great deal of time and effort to compete. And it's just a different skill. Like for me, if I had a bad year, I can't afford that. I'm saving for a wedding. I'm paying a mortgage, and I still have debt and stuff. Like, I can't really take those chances right now. The thought kind of terrifies me. But the biggest challenge I'd say was just figuring out how to think about and look at the game and really disconnect your mind from that. When you're playing with a lot of your friends and all of you have a deep understanding, you tend to knock on each other like, what are you doing there? That was stupid. And you don't mean that they're stupid. And you don't mean that was stupid. It's just like the easiest way to communicate that's an error, and without having to go into a deep explanation of it. So being able to like really separate myself from quick language that was targeted at very deep understanding players, and instead to start to narrow it and figure out what makes a game interesting and what makes it exciting to watch and why it's important to watch, was I think the biggest challenge, was just molding the language behind it and really figuring out how to zero in on that point, so that people who don't know the game can watch it and be interested, and that people who do know the game can hopefully learn something from it. Maybe you're not the best player in the world. If we were going to cast for the 200 best players in the world, we wouldn't have much of an audience. So I think that's probably like the biggest thing about it, is you do get criticized by a lot of your peers for saying some dumb sounding stuff at times, but learning to shake that off, I think, is another big part of it too. That's another one, like being in the public eye a little bit more, and I'm pretty going to get criticism from pretty much every single angle I go at. Not letting that drive me nuts, I think, is pretty important too. It still does, but take it with a grain of salt. There's always something good to look at, even if someone is like almost purely being negative in their input. Like you put enough of those pieces together and you start to draw a picture from it. So information and parsing it, probably the biggest challenge.
Okay. And again, that kind of rolls us into our very next question, which comes from Andrew is Living on Twitter. And he says, what was the most surprising thing you found about casting, and maybe perhaps something that isn't pretty obvious to people who might be watching or playing Hearthstone?
Goodness, it's that cameras are exhausting. They're very exhausting. Like, even if you're not on them for a very long time, just having to... God, why do I keep bumping this? I got to get my hands away from this stupid thing. I'm going to lean really far forward with my body way far back. It'll be funnier too. Like being able to like position yourself on a camera so that you look like you're squared up, and you don't see like a crease that's on your big your shirt or whatever. Like, I'm very picky about that sort of stuff, and probably to a deep unhealthy compulsive level. But it's always like a big point for me. I want the show to be as awesome as it possibly can. And so every single time that camera hits me, and I'm thinking about a billion different things at a time, and you hear like the guy talking in your ear, and you're trying to listen to TJ talk at the same time, but you're trying to get it done in 30 seconds, and then like you got another game coming up, and sometimes they go, no, wait, we have a video we want to show, or hang on, we're having a tech issue. It's like so much stuff, and you really can't mess it up. And so we have errors that take place. There's a lot of them that happen, and a lot of them just kind of go unnoticed because they're seamless. But sometimes the errors are really big. And I think back to the last champs where TJ's doing the end of show throw, and he just lost his train of thought. And he like says something, and we all kind of look at him because, we're not supposed to be talking right now. We're supposed to just shut up and let TJ throw the show because it's a very tight window of timing that you're working with. And eventually he goes, I don't know what I'm doing. There it is. There it is. And he's talking about his own thought process. And I was like, TJ's having a bad set. Keep it up, TJ! Like, those little things, like, there's so many of them that you can mess up that it really gets to you at a certain point. And when you don't mess them up, it feels great. And when you do mess them up, you're like, I ruined everything. And that's, like, always the nightmare of hosting to me. I always consider myself a weak host because of that. And I remember just the first time it was my big responsibility, and I was like, this is it. I'm going to do it. Throw in the Tespa show, and I go, and we'll see you next week. And then the show closes, and I was like, why did I say it like that? Next week win on what? And we'll see you next week. We'll see you next week. Like next was the big important part of it. I'm like, oh yeah, great one, idiot. Little things add up. It's a lot of taxes, and enough taxes will break anything.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. So our next question says, what tools as a caster would you like to see developed? Now, you have something for this?
Oh, easiest thing in the world. Replays.
Yes.
Oh.
Sandbox and replays.
Sandbox it, yes.
Being able to definitively go back and recreate a situation and play through it is like one of the most cumbersome things to do right now, because you'd have to do it manually. And there are tools to do that, and there are replays, but they're quite unaesthetically appealing. I don't like looking at replays from third-party stuff. I just really don't. And so it feels like a pretty tough thing for them to build because, there's like a million things going on that they have to do. And so to like ship out something that's going to be used by such a small number of people, it's like my own personal greed taking over there. Like how many people are really going to use replays? How many people are really going to use sandbox mode? Not very many. And so for me, it's like, one of those personal greedy things. I think if it was going to be anything for a widespread audience, I want like more social involvement, where I would like to see like, you being able to make a guild or a clan or whatever, and like have big challenges there and like have quests related to that, and then like big community quests, which they kind of did with Cheer. It was a giant community quest sort of thing, but it was like through Twitch and not through the game as much. I want to see more social and community involvement, and I definitely, for myself personally, would want to see like replays and sandbox and stuff like that.
Awesome.
Yeah, see, I'd love to be able to link somebody my stats, like, how many total wins I have with a class or total wins in arena. Just stuff like that would be great, even if it linked to like a website supplied by Blizzard. You click on the client and it opens up. I know they try to embrace the mobile aspect. That would be difficult, but that I would love to just be able to brag about myself.
Detailed stats. I would like detailed stats for sure.
Yeah.
The one thing I would want to answer my own question, is the top player's hand reversed in the spectator mode.
Oh yeah, I mean spectator. There's so many spectator features.
Yeah,
I'm like,
it's just like just that. Just do that. So like the couple times I've casted anything, and it's just like I have to mouse up, kind of read the card upside down. It's like I hate it. It's just, I know it's probably something very very minor, but still.
Yeah,
it's production's problem.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah,
for sure. So that's another very greedy quality of life change for me, and I'm certain for people who actually do the job of producing the event instead of just talking about it. There's just so many little things. It's really hard for me to criticize much about like the game of the client. Honestly, like I'm very satisfied with it. It's easily the game that I've played for the most hours in such a short duration of time, and continue to maintain my sanity while doing so.
Yeah. All right. So our next question says, do you ever see Wild as a possible HCT style competitive format? What do you think Blizzard would need to do to make that happen?
So if they were to do it like immediately, they would probably need like a time accelerator. I think back to the age of Hearthstone and like where the age of Magic was, where Vintage really started interesting me. I'm a big old school player, and I love old school cards. That's like probably one of the most interesting things to me about the game is the history behind it, and then being able to even go back now with a form. There's a format in Magic called 93-94 where you only play with cards that were printed in 1993 and 1994. That's it. And there's so many different decks that continue to break through and continue to win tournaments and adapt and like create a new archetype. And I'm like, golly, this has been around for like 24 years now. Like, certainly this would have been figured out, and it just wasn't. Like, there's so many powerful cards that there's a lot you can do with it. And Hearthstone, it's reminding me of that time in Magic where you started to see a divide in the groups, where it was like some people like the old school stuff, but most people like the new stuff, and most people just generally will like new stuff, because it's new. Everyone likes new stuff. It's about that time where it felt like the old cards were going to die. Like in Magic, where you were just like, nobody cares about these. They're not worth anything. Like, I'm just going to sell them all off. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I was that weirdo kid who was like, no, I don't want to sell any of my cards. I want to keep all of them. And I would say about 3 or 4 years down the road, I started to notice people caring about it. And when I started noticing people caring about it, I was like, I think I'm going to play this format. This is what I want to do. I love old cards. And so I started playing it. And the community just very slowly grew. In Magic, it's much harder because, there's 17,000 copies of a certain rare printed. You're done after that. If you don't have one of those, like how can you play? So the community there is like super hardcore. And in Hearthstone, it's really easy to like just have those cards over a certain amount of time, or, you make them. It's always a flat cost that, you're spending to make them. And so I think it's like going to take a little bit more time in Hearthstone maybe, but it's getting there. You need more time for the cards to separate themselves enough. Like Mad Scientist right now still doesn't feel that unique of an effect to me. It feels like something that's just normally in the game. And I think as we continue to play, we're going to see like unlocking free secrets is not a good thing. Like, it's very powerful. As there more secrets get printed, that effect becomes even more dangerous. You're seeing cards get Hall of Famed. year after year. We've seen a lot of leadership changes in Hearthstone as well. It's like, what plans does that change for the game or the way that people see it in a certain way? Wild also now has the Genbaku introduced into it, which some of the Genbaku decks are really strong and Wild. That's something you need to keep an eye on. Are there cards that are literally too powerful for Wild? We saw Aviana and Naga Sea Witch get changed. Like, as these mechanics get introduced, there's a certain point where you have to let it do its thing. You have to let that powerful thing exist. And I think powerful things are part of the appeals of those kinds of formats to me, where it's like, it's disgustingly overpowered. You are just going to lose sometimes. That happens in every format, but in Wild, I feel like, to me, that's one of the driving forces, is where can I get to a point where you start to see such a defined mechanism of broken decks that control decks know exactly what they need to do to beat those. And they can start to zero in on that, and you start to see very defined deck lists. It's out in the wild right now. It's the Wild West. There's not competition for it, so there's not a lot of players who are driving that format. In order for it to work, though, I think it takes more time, and you're going to have to support it if you really want it to be a thing, or someone's going to have to support it. It's one of those two things.
Yeah, I'm one of those players where, I love being able to use every card in my collection. I played top 1 in Magic mostly, and I love
that's
the
the way to say
format. So
Type 1 and Type 2, that's what you had back then.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
So, all right. This next question actually comes from me, because I absolutely loved the "Everyone Was Admirable" skit where you guys were all in the green room, and then like all of a sudden it was like a gosh, what was the name of that show? Twilight
Zone.
Yeah, Twilight Zone episode where everybody just becomes admirable. It's probably one of my favorite things you guys have ever filmed. Do you have a favorite skit or bit of content that the casting crew has done, or do you have any stories from, doing those types of things that you could share?
Those things are so fun to do, and it really takes a long time to do that stuff, because not only do you have to shoot it from a bunch of different angles, but someone has to keep in mind how they're going to edit it, and it evolves as it goes along. We always start with like a very basic script, and then everyone has an idea, and then everyone has an idea, and so you get to a point where you're like, this is a lot of stuff, and it's supposed to be like 45 seconds to 60 seconds, so it can get quite difficult. Filming those was just so much fun. I love doing that kind of work, because you have to look at the big picture of things. Like, one small detail could take one of those things and completely crush it. Like, it can absolutely take it from like perfect to just like nothing if you mess it up. For doing stuff like that, though, like Trinity was definitely just my absolute favorite. It was like, Doug was the producer for Trinity series, and he tried so hard to just use like the goofiest imaginable things to make a big difference. And he really just kind of didn't care what you did, as long as you did it like in a manner that was, appropriate for what it was. And I remember just like, we figured out a skit with this abacus, and I just kept wanting to reference the abacus all throughout the show. There'd be times I would just literally grab the abacus because it was sitting there, and I would like say something and then just put it back. And like, I could hear Doug laughing, from across the studio. And it just, every single week, just something different would happen. And I'm like, what is Doug doing? Like, the week I will never forget is I turned the corner to go walk into where the studio was. I get dropped off on my, Uber or Lyft or what have you. I turn the corner, and as soon as I turn the corner, Doug also turns the opposite corner, and he just got a giant shark balloon in his hand. And I'm like, what is this even for? Like, what is it? This has nothing to do with Hearthstone. Nothing at all. It's just a giant shark balloon. We used the shark balloon twice. And it's just so much weird stuff happened to that. And like, you would put together like the gag reels, and you're like, there's like 40 minutes worth of gag reels, like just from like one season of shows. And so my favorite one about that is actually, I wasn't there. I got sick, and I think I had strep throat or the flu or something. I literally couldn't cast. I come downstairs in the morning, and I'm like, DJ, I don't think I can cast, man. I don't think it's gonna happen. And like, I have like 102 fever or something. I'm like sitting in the hotel room, like miserable, trying to get better. And they're like, how are we gonna do this with only 2 people? And so they're sitting on like the side desk, like introing the show, and like, they're like, oh, thank you very much. Let's throw it over to TJ and Frodan. And they start playing the music, and you see them take their headsets off. And it's like, and they just get over. Close the desk, and they get into the desk. They just sit down, and they put on their headsets. And TJ looks up, he goes, "Thanks, TJ." And then he just starts going. I was like, "Oh my gosh, they did it!" I was like, I didn't know how they were going to do it. I had no idea. They had to come up with it on the fly because I just couldn't show up that morning. It was just perfect. And I think that's probably my favorite one ever, was TJ throwing to himself and then thanking himself.
So, speaking of TJ, how much of a loving father is TJ, and how does it feel to be his son?
Oh, gosh. So, for that skit, they didn't tell me that everyone else was being just treated as though they were a baby. They I'm like strapped to TJ for like 20 or 30 minutes or whatever, and they just told me to act as though I were a baby. And I'm like, okay. And then when I saw the piece, I was like, what? I don't. Why does everybody else just act like they're what? And I'm just like lost. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, that's like how it felt when I was watching it happen, because I didn't see everyone else film everything. But for real, his baby is fucking adorable. I'm sorry if I'm not the language.
No, you're good.
You're fine.
We were at Orange County, and his wife Karen is there, and we're just hanging out. It's the first time I'd seen Oliver, and I was like, oh, we're just sitting around talking. He's just asleep, and I go fist bump, and I fist bump TJ, and I fist bump Karen, and I go fist bump Oliver, and I go to like jokingly fist bump him, and Karen picks up his hand, and his hand is just like this, and then as I move my hand, it just goes. And he fist bumps.
Nice.
And I was just like, this is the smartest baby in the world. How does he know that? His kid is just so adorable. And I think that, he's very lucky to be blessed with such a wonderful baby. And I think that kid is going to somehow be the weirdest and smartest kid of all time. Because everyone knows TJ is weird AF. But man, his kid is just so adorable. I can't wait for him to grow up and be like, all right, time for Uncle Admirable to teach you some cards. Your dad sucks. And here we go.
All right. So I think this next question comes from Versika, and he can fill you in on some details if you don't exactly remember. But I wanted to know, what did you think of Game 4 between Fino and Cassie in the HCT Orange County Grand Finals?
Okay, so Game 4 was Shutterwalk versus
Death Rattle Hunter.
Oh, yeah, I remember that game. Man, I was so excited in that finals. I don't know what happened. That was like one of those rare moments where you saw two people who, in my head, were so deserving of a title at that point, and it just not like really quite had it there. I mean, there's massively dominant players, and seeing both of them in the finals was just, honestly, that was the peak and the highlight for me. It was like one of these two was finally going to win like a title. You ask any of those players, and they're like, yeah, it's cool. Done really well. You ask other people, they're like, oh my God, it's so crazy. They dominate everything. But in their head, they want the wins. Like every single one of them I talked to, it seems like they don't care that they did super well over the course of the season. Like they want the win. They would just rather have a bunch of washouts and then have the big win. And like, even at Hunter Ace after the Hearthstone Global Games thing, he's like, third place. I'm like, what the? I'm like, it's pretty darn good, man. Like, just, a lot of teams in the world, a lot of players, and you're third out of all of them. That's pretty darn good. I think I'd be happy about that. And like, you can tell he's happy, but he really wanted that first place. So to me, that was like the point where I started to really lose sight of what was happening. And I was just getting really excited. And I was like, oh my God, I'm just like everything that was like crazy that like could have happened started to happen. And I just remember getting to a point where I would kind of glance at the game and I would look at Dan, and Dan just had like his eyes wide open, like, what are you saying right now? And then I would see what I was saying, and it was really dumb. And I'm like, oh my God, he can't do that because XYZ. And just continued to snowball in that same vein. And I was like, I don't know what's happening anymore. I'm watching an incredible match, and I've lost sight of strategy and concept and time and everything else. It was just genuine, pure excitement over being able to watch the two of them play against each other. So I do remember it, but clearly the excitement was the standout part for me, where I was so happy to see the two of them have such a great performance at that event.
Oh yeah, and that's why I put the question in there to begin with, was that like you could feel that come through, and that's why I wanted to kind of get your take on it, to be there and kind of in that moment and experiencing it, because it just seemed like, aside from the game with Language Hacker, where there was like the dang dozen Hadronoxes in the
against Renman,
in the fall championship.
That was crazy.
That Shutterwalk Death Rattle game was probably one of the most interesting games of Hearthstone that I watched all year. And then like the way you painted that picture for us at home, like we were watching it, but getting to hear you, it was just like, it was just, you got everybody else excited about it. So it really came through, and I was just like, God, it's so genuine. That is, his excitement is making me exciting, and the game was already as exciting as it was, and it was just like feeding off each other. It was really cool. Like as a viewer at home, it made me really excited to get to watch that match.
Yeah. So my takeaway here is say more dumb stuff.
Yeah. Get excited, say dumb stuff, and we're going to say it right with you. So
the strategy perspective, I seriously got lost on it. I was like, I can't focus anymore. It's not happening. It was just genuinely, to me, that exciting to watch. Where I couldn't contain myself, and it's like my job partially to contain myself. But I think it came off really well in that one, because it just really was, like, to me, it felt that important. Where I was like, this is just an awesome match to take place. Like, in my head, I didn't really care who won. I just wanted to see good games, and I wanted to see exciting Hearthstone, and I wanted to see giant things happen, and I wanted to see the conquest, and I wanted to see the defeat. And there were gladiators in our arena that night. And to me, I'm getting stupid nerd chills just thinking about it again now.
So speaking of gladiators in your arena, this is not on the list of questions, but is there an all-time match that you have cast that stands out above the rest?
I mean, this is such an easy question for me too. When Firebat won Worlds in 2014, like I remember, like nice. In July of that year, like I was still really active in competitive scene, and I was doing like private coaching and such, and there was like a moment where he messaged me and he's like, "Hey, I'm looking for coaching," and I was like, "What for? Like you're literally number one on ladder right now, and you're beating everybody, and everyone's talking about you. Like this is." Like, what are you talking about? Like, I can't help you. I'm willing to practice with you, but I can't really like help you. I don't think. And so, we get in a call and we start talking about it. It's like you almost knew that this is what I was going to talk about too. I didn't.
Little context. Facebook does those memories things where they show you pick posts from your past. This just happened to pop up in my timeline today, November 7th, 2014. The Worlds where Firebat won it all.
And wow. And I remember him like showing, he's like, "Oh yeah, I made these spreadsheets where I have geometrical distribution of how many 5-drops you want in ZooDecks." And I was like, "What the crap?" I was like, "Dude, no one is doing this. I've never seen anyone do this. Nobody in the world's doing this." I was like, "You're gonna win the world championships." And he just kind of laughs. He's like, okay, I guess. And then he was, top 2 in points, so he got seeded through to the Hammerstein Ballroom, which was the top 16 in Americas that played off. And he made it through that. And then at Worlds, it was just like he was just dumpstering everybody. It was like the event where it looked like Kalento could not be beaten. That was like the big story going into that. And then Kranich beats him off the back of what I would call a blunder from Kalento. And it was like a very small looking thing, but, him not playing a Lotheb very actively cost him the game in that spot. It opened up that window for just the nightmare to happen of Kranich to draw the perfect card and have lethal. And when Kranich won, he like rips his headset off, and like he's like blown away by it, because like in his interviews he's like I can't beat him. He's like I can't beat him. He's not defeatable. And he wins, and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy. And then leading up to that point is like the last 6 months just had like this like tunnel flashback in my head where I was like, I literally have been telling people that this guy's going to win for like 5 months now. Like, and I firmly believed that in my heart of hearts, even though it's a card game, I really deep down believed he was just going to win. And I just got way overly excited. And if you go back and listen to the clip and the way it's said, it is like, we joke about it on Hearthstone, like during the rehearsals all the time, where like something exciting's happened or we're supposed to be excited at some point, and TJ will look at me and he'll be like, "Fireman, it's the 2014 Hearthstone World Champion!" Because I'm just like way overexcited and like way over yelling. And it was just, to me, I couldn't believe it. I'd been talking about it for months, and in my head, like I knew it was going to happen. And then when it just happened, I was like, wow. Like this is actually the timeline we're in. Like I felt it deep down in my heartest of hearts, and then he won the whole thing. And I was like, I can't believe this. Like a friend I met through cards, like some 18-year-old kid, and then he just like soars straight to the top because of his hard work. That to me is like probably the most special match that I'll ever watch, and probably the most special one I'll ever cast. I don't think much is going to compare to that one.
That's so awesome. That's really cool. And it is funny that picture just happened to pop up in my timeline. So if you guys want to see that, if you're listening to our audio podcast and you want to see that, make sure you check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ECMMOgamers, and check out this episode. You'll be able to see the picture of 2014 Admirable. So
110 pounds heavier.
So, all right. Next question is, what is your favorite Hearthstone deck of all time?
Force Nature Savage Droid, easily. And the reason why is, once again, ties to Firebat, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
When I would practice with Firebat, he would beat me on just about everything. And, he had an edge, it felt like, in every single matchup. For whatever reason, the Druid Mirror, he just kept taunting up the Druid of the Claw. He'd always make it a 4/6. Always make it a 4/6. And, he would trade my minions. And I go, dude, stop doing that. And I was like, if I attack you and then you attack my minions dealt double damage. And for whatever reason, every other deck, that clicked to him very easily. But for some reason in Druid, it did not. And then just... the next day we log in, we start practicing. He charges the Druid of the Claw, he hits me in the face, and I was like, I'm going to lose. I was like, he's got the momentum, and I know how this pans out because this is what I do every single game when I play this deck. And everyone's like, oh, yeah, Druid, it's really hard to Force Nature Savage Roar. But, I maintained a very high win rate in that mirror matchup, and all the best players that I knew seemed to do the same thing. And so to me, that was like a stand-up matchup where I do think that charge damage from hand was absurd, and I'm, kind of glad it changed. To me, that deck had so much flexibility, even with, what I would consider some quite poor cards. Ancient Allure was a pretty bad card, all things considered. It was just the way that you could set it up and lean on being able to kill your opponent's cards because they had the fear of Force Nature and Savage Roar inside their head. I really like that feeling. And so I think that the direction I would love to see that go is continue in that same vein where Druid is this massive challenge you on board somehow and then punish you for not taking care of it. Every deck I think in some way needs to have that level of operation, but that deck did it in such a way where it was so damn good that every single time you started to move towards turn 7, you were like, I'm going to die. Every single turn. And I love that impending feeling of doom almost regardless of what it is. Some things I don't like, but for the most part, if it's an impending disaster that you feel coming, to me, that is my ideal style of game. Where one of the two of us is gonna die.
Yeah, that was my jam. Force Nature Savage Roar. That's what I cut my teeth on and fell in love with the competitive side of Hearthstone. Yeah. So,
do you have a favorite non-Hearthstone game?
Favorite non-Hearthstone game? It's really easy to say Magic on that, but I can only tolerate so much Magic before I lose my mind. Hashtag land. I think the game that really drove me into getting into video games quite as deep as I did was probably the combination of two games. So it was Warcraft 3 was the engine for it, and not the Warcraft 3 game. I was always pretty bad at the latter game, just too much stuff to control. But Dota, I remember playing Dota back. Oh my gosh! I mean, I gotta look at a calendar real quick.
When it was still a mod for Warcraft 3?
17 years, it was 15 years ago, maybe?
Yeah.
My friends introduced me to this, and I was like, you're just controlling one character. How hard could that be? And then, you start playing it, and you're like, there is so much stuff to do in this game. This is insane. There's, way too much stuff going on. And, the idea of what a MOBA was didn't really exist back then. It was a guy made a 5v5 map. And, I started playing a ton of that, and I started getting into these weird Warcraft 3 games where, probably my favorite one is Castle Fight. And the way that I would describe Castle Fight is 1v1 tower defense. And it really combines an aspect of a card game with a real-time strategy game where the timing really matters in that game, but how you build your opening and how you transition to the middle of the game and then how you get into these late-game chaotic scenarios really emulates a lot of how card games work. You have to choose a particular opening building, and if you don't, you can get snowballed on very easily. But you also have to have a mid-game plan on how to close if you took the advantage or not get closed on if you lost. And then you have to have a late-game ultimate plan where you start to take over, and it's such an overwhelming advantage that your opponent can't beat it. Sometimes there are ties, and that's part of to me the appeal of Castle Fight is it breaks the rules of that card game where there are ties sometimes. And you get to a scenario where you're like, all right, well, replay. No one gets a point. And it's such a simple game. You don't control a single unit other than your builder. You don't control what any of the units that you spawn do. It's all build order, timing, economy management, all that other stuff built, and then gameplay and all managed into one. It's a combination of an RTS and a card game. And I love that feeling. So aside from Hearthstone, I think Castle Fight is probably the game that, has really shaped the most of how I get into games and what I understood personally was really appealing about them.
That's cool. All right, and our last question for you comes from our Discord community. Inked asks, how do you feel games like Artifact and MTG Arena are going to impact the Hearthstone scene going forward?
This is a question I get asked a lot, and people always ask it from, this is a really well phrased way to put it. Most of the time I get asked this question, it feels like it's from a point of like aggressiveness or defensiveness. I don't really know how to put it. I have resting bitch voice, so I always sound like I'm really angry when I'm always usually quite happy. It's a really serious condition that I don't know how to handle. I'm of the opinion that card game cultures, or that card game rather, is like a culture. I don't think it's like one particular thing. And I'd say when I was younger, it definitely felt like it was one particular thing until I found another card game other than Magic that I really liked. And what I started to realize over the years is like kind of the deeper you get into card games, the more you realize that it's like a cultural thing where you want to experience new rule sets, and like, whether the game sticks to the wall or not is another story. But just learning new games is like, that's so fun to me. I love new rule sets. Even though there's so many card games I've tried and I detest it afterwards. The aspect of learning that new game was a really big point of me to be able to have like social aspects to games and just, have fun with other people. I think that there being competitors and active competitors of Hearthstone is good for everybody. And, I'm certain that there's a lot of people in, Blizzard, high management, whatever, who are going to be like, that's incorrect. We wish we had no competitors. And I'd be like, yeah, maybe, but kind of the deeper people get into card games, the more they continue to get into card games. It's quite rare for someone like me to just play one game and I think that that's it. Now, I'm a super exception to that rule, but, you look at like board games, for instance. Imagine there's like one board game. Yeah, who cares? But if there's a bunch of board games, all of you buy a bunch of board games and all you play a bunch of board games. And then that one board game that was really good and everyone really liked, you buy the next version of it and you buy the expansion and you keep going. To me, that's part of what card game culture is about. It's the ones who are making the best game that really stands out to me. So something like Artifact, I have my own personal opinions about it, which I'm not really going to go too much into detail on today, but I don't think Hearthstone's going anywhere. Like, it's such a wonderful game. And as much as I hear, some negative things about it, it's like, it's very rare that something keeps my interest as long as Hearthstone has. I've probably sunk money into 50 different card games in my lifetime. And for me, Hearthstone's number one. And, I would say like in my top 10 list, you're going to find some weird stuff in there too. Like I'd put Alien versus Predator in my top 10. If anyone remembers that game, you playing the turrets like simultaneously or whatever it was. It was just a really fun and unique game. That game didn't stick to the wall, but it very much could have. And I think that having all that stuff there and like learning from other different ideas and being able to incorporate, well, what about your game can speak to a certain way is a very big deal about it. So I think it's healthy for all card game culture at the end of the day that there's real competitors that are going to have a force out there. You get to learn from each other, you get to experience new things, and it keeps things fresh as well. If I only played Hearthstone, I don't think it would be quite as interesting to me. But the fact that I do play so many other games, I get to see the comparison, and at the end of the day, I get to make my own choice. And for me, that choice is, I think Hearthstone's superior to the competitors right now.
All right. Well, there you go. Thank you for taking the time to answer those for our listeners. We greatly appreciate it. Now, let's talk about the news. So BlizzCon was this past weekend, in case, you've been living under a rock. And,
or you haven't been listening to me tell you I'm going for months now.
Yeah. So we had the HGG finals. It's all been building up to this. And the 2018 HGG champion is Team China. So, Zeroshio, I'll let you start, and then we'll kind of get Admiral's impressions if he wants to pitch anything in on this.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of drama and whatnot going into HGG, and I'm not going to go into too much on that. But one of the biggest highlights was Brazil, and Brazil was pretty much favored to possibly take it all. And China has not had a very good run of competitive Hearthstone for a while. It's kind of been one of those stories that they look like they're going to do well in HCT or HGG, and they just fall. They just fail. And it was not expected for China to do as well as they did. And when it was China versus Brazil in the finals, I personally thought, well, China's been doing good. They've had some unexpected wins. They played a Quest OTK mage, and it was just amazing to watch. And when I saw them against Brazil, I was like, this is easily going to be one of the matches of the year. And China just beats them 3-0 off the back of Exodia mage. And I was just really impressed by China, and I'm glad they finally did something memorable. And I think this isn't going to be the last time we see China do something well. I think they just dipped their toes in, and they're going to want to get in that water again because they have some really top-notch players. Admirable, just over all of HGG this season, do you have any – what are your impressions on HGG for 2018?
Yeah, that's a good question. I always like team formats. I think if you make them like the sole focus, it loses some of its luster. So I like that HGG is like its standout piece for where team format's concerned. And I think it strikes the right chord too. I want international competition. I want country pride. I want regional pride. I want to see people battle because they want to win. You know, that's to me is so much about what HGG is about. It's like them working as a team. You know, there's a lot of players I'm certain who would pick different teammates, or they wouldn't have teammates at all, or what have you. And then, you know, I think that was actually one of the struggles for Norway, was that they had so many good minds working on one game that they would come to these impasses and kind of meet halfway in between. And, you know, I look at that and I'm like, that is such a cool thing to watch. Like, you got to get organized or this isn't going to work. And I think that's one of the strengths that China ended up having, is rather than having 4 of them go to the same tournament and having to find their own practice groups, they just got to work together. And them working together, they all got to utilize their strengths where it made sense. They all got to forego their weaknesses where they were, and they got to actually work together as one unit. And on top of that, they also come out with like a really strange deck and made a big impact with that as well. You know, the HGG format for this year, I don't think was quite strong. I think there was it was quite a poor variation of a tournament format where like deck order concern and, you know, bans and stuff like that were panning out. But overall, the event just has something special about it with team competition and regional pride that's really cool. So I want to see that aspect really focused on and honed in on, and how do they do that even stronger for next year? That's kind of my thought on it. But like, China has historically underperformed on international stages. And so to see them put up such a dominant win in this one, I think was a really cool thing to watch, because that's really the big thing that was missing so far. They had plenty of competitive players. They had plenty of solid ones that were very consistent. They were missing that big title, though. And them getting that title, I think, was one of the big deals for it.
All right. So the other big news coming out of BlizzCon was, of course, the annual set announcement. This was going to be the third set, December announced set, and this is Rosticon's Rumble. So it'll be the first time we've had a troll-themed set based around the Gurubashi Arena in Stranglethorn Vale. Each class will get a Loa legendary minion with a specific spirit. There is a new mechanic in this set called Overkill, where if damage is done to a minion above their health, an additional effect will trigger. So there will be a solo adventure for this, just like there has been for the past. It's called the Rumble Run. You start your run by picking one of 3 randomly selected troll champions. This choice will determine your class and give you a powerful minion on the board at the start of each match. So, as they usually do, they are releasing the Rosticon's Rumble Bundle, which will include the new alternate Shaman Hero King Rosticon and the Ready to Rumble card back. You get 50 card packs for $49.99. Or you can get the Challengers Bundle, including the card back and 17 packs for $19.99. Versika, you are a bit of a fan of the trolls. And I know you specifically sat out this last expansion. So tell us, what are your thoughts about Rosticon's Rumble?
I'm super excited for this set. I love the theme. I love that Shaman is actually going to get a serious alternate hero.
Wait, you don't think Morgul the Oracle is serious?
We've been over this. We've been over this. I mean, what, Paladin's got 5 alternate heroes now? And it's like, come on, I get Morgul. So yeah, as a shaman player and as a shaman main, I was super excited to get the alternate hero, and just I love the concept of the Loa and the spirit for each class. I like that extra added flavor, and then adding the new mechanic of overkill. I feel like that is something that was missing, was sort of that early game punish for putting out weaker minions. So if depending on, and we've only seen a few cards, but depending on what the rest of the set offers, it could be something that really contributes to that early mid game balance that I'm hoping to see a little more balance in that 3 to 5 and 6 mana range, where I feel like a lot of games now sort of get out of hand if you're not playing Hellfire. But something that kind of helps, that kind of helps classes like Shaman who are struggling in that mid game section right now to compete with the likes of Hunter and Warlock.
Okay, all right. So, Admirable, what are your early thoughts on the set, and how do you prepare for new set releases as a caster?
I want to second the Shaman comment. Morgul is one of the only things in the game I do not own, alongside the Golden Celebration card back, because I have not made a championship yet. Yet is the key word there.
Yep.
Let that one sink in. Probably not going to happen, but you never know. The King Rastakhan, that's my style though. Like, he's really in your face, and he's like kind of a sarcastic, jerk, but in a way that you really enjoy. As I hope to one day be in the position of. That style to me is like perfect, where it's very flashy. It's really in your face. You know exactly what you're expecting, and that is delivered to you. Like sometimes dazzling the mind and illuminating the eye is not about, showing someone what they haven't seen before, but showing them exactly what they think is going to happen. And I think this set is really lining up to do some of those things where you expect the lowest to be very powerful effects if you can utilize it. I look at a keyword like overkill, and that's something that almost everybody can understand without even knowing what the mechanic does. You see overkill and you see some text, and if you know the rules of the game, you're like, I guess that happens when I overkill something. It's so hard to design mechanics that do that sort of stuff, like where you read it and just instantaneously grasp it. So my question is, can you make that vital? I'm hopeful that they can. And then number 2 is, can you make the cards interesting without making them like kind of disgustingly game defining and overpowering? That to me is like the real challenge. And I look at a card like the Paladin Legendary that they've released. It's like a 25 mana card, and you go, what the heck? And it's 7/5 Divine Shield, Rush, Lifesteal, Taunt, whatever else has got on it. And then you read, costs 1 less for each mana you spent on a spell this game. You instantaneously have your mind jump to build a Paladin deck with a lot of spells in it. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't do it in the same way that you've seen all the other ones do. I'm certain at the end of the day, there's always one of those very defined, clean lists where you know exactly what you're going to end up playing with. But it's not like a Hobgoblin build around where you're like a bunch of 1-attack stuff that costs not very much. It's not like Prince Keleseth where you're like, guess I play an aggro deck with no 2-drops in it. It's like, well, how do you want to build this deck that utilizes this very powerful, strong minion? Like,
Holy Wrath!
Yeah. 25 of them. Now, stuff like that is like really where my head goes. I'm like, there's a lot of things you can do with it, but there's not like one single defined thing. I think it's important to have some of those, but my goodness, like I look at the stuff that's already been released in the set where there's like a lot of little tiny things that matter a ton. And that always gives me that feeling of like, I cannot wait to start brewing up some decks. And for me, the way I always prepare for things is I do my checklist. Number 1, is there a pirate thing I can do? If so, do that. Number 2, mess with a bunch of stupid legendaries. Then number 3, craft all the gold legendaries that I think are going to be really cool. Like for instance, I have a golden Marsh Queen. My bad.
But I have a golden face collector that I did. So
the intentional ones are the ones that hurt. Like if you just have one of them and you're like, yes, that card's cool and I want to use it. But when you make it and you're like, oh, what was I doing?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. I just can't bring myself to change him at this point. But I look at the Cannon Barrage. That's the card I'm looking at right now. 6 mana, 3 damage to a random enemy, and it fires again for each pirate I have.
Yeah.
And the cannons! The first time I 18 someone with that, woo! I'm going to be so satisfied.
And
Patches is going to be useful again in Wild.
He still is.
I mean, to me, that is something I'm really hoping to see in this set, and it's something that we've talked about before. I kind of felt like Battle Cries took over Hearthstone, and they kind of lessened the impact of spells. So I'm really anxious to see if this kind of brings back more of that. I need to put meaningful spells in my decks and not just meaningful Battle Cries. And the spells that have made it in have seemed so game defining. I want to see more of those mid-range spells. And actually, I thought they did a pretty good job with Flanking Shot. I really liked Flanking Shot as a spell. And I really liked Wing Blast as a spell. I felt like those were interesting. They were powerful, but they weren't game defining. And I wanted to see more of that across the board. And I'm really hoping that this new set will bring that in.
Well, Shaman has the balanced version of a Spreading Plague now.
Oh yeah,
6 mana overload,
Rain of
3,
Frogs,
only 3.
Rain of Toads, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Quick Phantom Militias, as I look at them.
Yeah,
Very
exactly.
quick to mobilize.
I'm excited to build, of course, the new OTK Paladin. That's definitely my first theory craft. But I want to make a hyper aggro priest.
Interesting.
And keep when the set comes out, that'll be one of the first decks that I test out, and if it's good, we'll have it on the show.
And that set will be coming out on December the 4th. So we are less than a month away now at the time of this recording. Those of you who follow Hero Power know that in the past, Matt at Arms has done a great job for us of creating our community ranking spreadsheet. We're bringing that back again for Rosticon. So if you don't know what it is, follow us on Twitter at HeroPower_cast, and once all of the cards are released, we will post that spreadsheet. You can go in, put your name on top of a column, and then give your predicted rankings for each card on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 meaning it'll probably never see play in the meta. 5 meaning it'll be meta defining. We love to do this before the expansion comes out, and then go back and look and see how terribly wrong we were 3 or 4 weeks into an expansion.
Now I want to remind everybody, if you do want to be part of the discussions in our Discord, we do have our patron community Discord. It's extremely active. We have a channel just for the photos and just for discussions on the sets, and we have them in there up to the minute. I'm part of a lot of Discords that have an automated system that automatically posts them when they're announced. Matt at Arms tends to get those in there even before those get done sometimes. So if you want to be part of that community, definitely go to patreon.com/heropower and be part of our community and the active discussions. It is amazingly fun when a new set comes out and being part of our Discord.
Yep. All right. So Hearthstone announced they are celebrating 100 million players. That is a lot of people.
It's huge.
So starting today, November the 7th, through November the 11th, if you log into the game, you will get 6 packs of Boomsday absolutely free just for logging in today through the 11th. There is also a new quest called Celebrating the Players that is basically play a friend, get 100 gold. This quest is repeatable up to 5 times. So that gives you 500 extra gold going into this new expansion release. So that's a free 5 packs of Rosticon.
So that's admirable. I was watching your stream today, and you actually did this quest with you know, an unknown player named Purple live on your stream.
Yeah, you know, 2-time national champion and 2-time world competitor. Very unknown if you follow the competitive scene.
So I mean, tell us a little bit about this. How easy was it? And when you play, do you both get the 100 gold, or only the challenger?
So we both had the quest, so we both got 100 gold. So once you've completed the quest, you're not going to get any more gold for it. At least I don't think anyway. But you know, we both were completing the quest, even though he was the one challenging me on it. And we were like running some fun stuff. We played a game of Standard, and I was like, oh, let's play a game of Wild. And I was like, oh, let's draft an arena deck, and we got to play that against each other. And I was like, oh, now we have to play odd and even decks, but we can't use Gen and Baku. And then the last one was 30 legendaries versus
all
30
legends.
legendaries.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Like we just like figured out, we were like, what can we do just to like spice it up? Like, I don't want to play 5 Standard games. We're about to play like 4 hours of Standard. I just want to spice it up a little bit. And oh my gosh, like it's 5 games. Like, how hard is that to complete? If you don't have a friend on there, that's fine. You know, like, you just start adding people and tell them, hey, I need to make 500 gold real quick. And I'm certain you'll run into somebody who's going to pick it up from there. It's like, you know, people add me all the time to cuss me out and tell me how lucky I was. I think it should be a breeze finding someone to play against that mechanism. And if you're not, you know, that's a good reason to get in the community then. Find some people you can play against, unlock that 500 gold. 500 free gold, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
like, I could...
Absolutely.
free stuff.
If you need somebody to play against, go to heropowerhs.com, click the About Us tab. The hosts' battle.net tags are there. Feel free to shoot us an invite, and you know, we'll play you. We'll help you, and if you have questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Whatever we can do to help you get into and involved with the Hearthstone community. So, all right. Well, that brings us to this week's Tavern Brawl, which is Send in the Murlocs. So, Murlocs have taken over the tavern. Choose a class and get a deck of random class spells and a whole mess of Murlocs. Both players start with the Unite the Murlocs quest in play. So, this is about as RNG of a Tavern Brawl as you can get. You enjoy just bashing people in the face with Murlocs, this is for you.
And whoever gets Valfit Inquisitor wins. That's pretty much, yeah.
Hey, the decks have Finja and Old Murkai. I'm a happy man.
Yeah,
They do.
The decks have been pretty fun so far.
I drew Old Stink Eye a couple times. My highest win rate Tavern Brawl at 1-1.
Nice.
All right. So those of you who follow our show know that every week we talk about a different deck that you might see on the ladder at some point. And knowing that we were going to have Mr. Admirable on the show, and knowing that he does enjoy himself some Warlock, we decided that we needed to play a good traditional Warlock deck that we could talk about. And so this week we are going to take a look at the Zoo deck. So I'll run down this deck list, and then I'll hand it off to Matt at Arms to kind of talk about the deck a little bit, and then we'll let Admirable give his 2 cents on this deck. So this list contains 2 Flame Imps, 2 Kobold Librarians, 2 Light Wardens, 2 Soul Infusion, 2 Soulfire, 1 copy of the Solarium, 2 Voidwalkers, 2 Voodoo Doctors, 1 copy of Mr. Prince Keliseth, 2 Doubling Imps, 2 Fungal Enchanters, 2 Happy Ghouls, 1 Life Drinker, 2 Saronite Chain Gang, 1 Despicable Dreadlord, 2 Doom Guards, and 2 Fungalmancers. So take it away, Matt at Arms.
This basically, it's Zoo. We've played Zoo for about 4 years now, so it's we kind of know how this deck runs. It's early drops into kind of middle game board swings to going face, probably starting on turn 4, 5, or 6, and hopefully winning by that point. Mulligans obviously keep Keliseth and 1-drops. Soul Infusion is great with the minions that double themselves with Sir Knight Chain Gang or doubling it. But if you can just drop it on a Flame Imp turn 1, turn 2, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, it's Zoo. It's not so good right now. It's probably not in the best spot in the meta right now, but it's a deck, and it will win you a few games.
Admirable, what are your thoughts on classic Warlock Zoo?
Man, you just got to get them. Like,
Yeah.
This is a deck that does not have a large window of time to kill your opponent, and so you got to zero in on that, and you got to maximize everything. And it's a deck you want to mulligan very aggressively with. It's a deck you want to take a bunch of chances with, and it's a deck where you need to look at your hand and figure out how much damage you can deal as quickly as you can possibly deal it. Every single matchup is going to provide you with different challenges to that, and sometimes you should be very liberal with your mulligans. Sometimes you should be very conservative with them instead. But understanding your opponent's turns and how they can punish your boards, that's the paramount key to it. So if you lose some games because you forgot about a card, just take that into account, because those are going to exist. Sometimes you just ignore them, and it's full steam ahead. But to me, the big ones I look for ways to combo Happy Ghoul early on, and ways to get Keleseth as early as possible. So in my experience, I have tended to mulligan probably more aggressively than is, I'd say advised by people with, any sense of reality or normality in it. I've been doing weird stuff like keeping Happy Ghoul and going for Keleseth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about it. Sometimes your hand is really nutso, and you keep a full grip. I'm tempted to keep that Soul Infusion and try to, slip the Serenite Chain Gang in to that one spot. But if you get a Fungal Mancer or a Doomguard blocking at bad times, you've discarded an extra card now. So there's a lot of opportunities to take risks and do a lot of cool stuff and really bash your opponents in if they don't come correct early on.
All right, so there you go. We are going to play this deck. So if you are joining us on Twitch or YouTube, please stay tuned as we move into the live play portion of our show. If you are listening to us via our audio podcast, we'd like to thank you for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at HeroPower_cast. You can find all of our past episodes on YouTube at youtube.com/ECMMOgamers or on our website at HeroPowerHS.com. Admirable, why don't you tell the people at home where they can find you if they would like to hear more of those dulcet tones?
Super easy. Everything is That's Admirable. Doesn't matter what platform you go on, unless it's Instagram, in which case it's Admirable. But everything is That's Admirable. There is a B in there. It's very easy to confuse it with Admiral, especially because TJ calls me the Admiral all the time. But it's at That's Admirable. That's how you find it.
Awesome. All right, guys, if you enjoy our show and you would like to help support and improve it, you can do so, as Zeroshio mentioned earlier, by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/HeroPower. For just $1 a month, you can get access to our patron-only Discord. I guess we'll see you again next week.
And don't forget to use your hero power.
All right. I just had to
There's something wrong with you.
Shake harder, boy. The only
All
thing I
right.
picture is that scene from The Simpsons.
Yeah, so we're going to fire up the old client here. And Matt at Arms, are you driving this week? Is that what I understand?
I am driving. I am hitting the hero power.
You
as
should
often
have
as I
friend
do.
request, Admirable. Bad at Arms will be the one driving.
Yeah, he's the one
right.
you'll need to spectate.
All right, let me get a quick little login here. Something about it, my computer loads everything fast except this game.
So,
Like, my phone loads it up like lightning speed. If I'm on my laptop, bam, I'm in. If I go to load it up on this old PC, though, like something goes wrong, and it's like the world's about to end. That's what it feels like for me.
I have an issue where as soon as I log in, like I have no problems launching it and logging in, but as soon as I get to the main screen, it freezes for like 20 seconds before I can do
Okay.
anything.
It is not letting me accept this request, so I'm going to deny it. Send me a new one.
You got it.
I mushed that button about 7,000 times, and it's like,
I
still
sent it
wait.
again. It didn't say sent though, so
Okay. Let me try sending you the thing, I guess. Let's try that. What's the numbers I'm looking for?
1523.
Matt at Arms, number 1523.
There we go.
So
That worked.
We did it.
Slicky HS in chat says the Admiral. That's admirable.
Yep, that's what TJ has decided to call me at this point. Yeah, I made a Twitter account that was ThatsAdmirable because so many people called me Admiral.
I saw that actually. I did see that.
The week I made that, I got like 500 new Twitter followers. I was like, this many people can't find me? Like, ah!
If you go to
Why is
that's
Brandon so
Admiral, it says, did you mean that's admirable?
Yeah.
It's really
It
clever.
sent 2 tweets ever. One of them was redirecting to my page, and the other one was to one of the co-casters saying, I hate you.
All right, so our first matchup is against a hunter,
We
Yeah.
like that.
and our
So-
opening hand is Saranat Chain Gang, Fungal Enchanter, Despicable Dreadlord, and Happy Ghoul.
I'm thinking about just keeping the Happy Ghoul.
I like it.
Just gonna toss everything else back.
Simple
And
enough.
draw into Soul Infusion, Voodoo Doctor, and the Solarium.
Nice.
Nice.
All right, this looks like an easy opener for me. All right,
Dang it.
so think about your stuff here. Think about it. Hang on. This is a very, very clean turn. Do you see it?
Pass.
Nope.
No.
Coin life tap. We want as
I like-
much stuff in play as early as possible and to deal maximum damage. If we coin life tap, we get Soul Infusion, Voodoo Doctor, Happy Ghoul.
I
Oh,
like that.
Okay.
I like that a lot.
Most damage, maximum damage, take risks, have complete disregard for what they're going to do, maximum damage. We got turn 2, now we got turn 3, and then we got turn 4. Plapanda better come correct or they are dead.
So you're saying Soul Infusion, Voodoo Doctor, Ghoul.
No. Voodoo Doctor
That's
first,
what I want
right?
to do. No, I want a Soul Infusion because I want a 4-3 and a 3-3 versus his 2-1.
Oh,
I
good
like it.
point. Good point. Yeah, see, I've always find myself with this play. It was like you need to take damage to get healed, so you feel like you're a turn behind. But I love coining out the hero power.
We had the option there of just going for the weaker turn with just the Happy Ghoul and then using the Soul Infusion on the Sarnak Chain Gang instead. But I think that's weaker. And the reason I think it's weaker is because I want to start bashing them in the face. They're going to use Flanking Strike very often, and Flanking Strike is going to set us behind right away. So there's a lot of merit to buffing up the Chain Gang instead. But I want that damage, and I want it now. If they don't have Flanking Strike, I want to kill them.
I'm just doubling it this turn, right? I think that's the way to go.
That's 4 stats, and the other one's 3.
Yep.
I like that.
Yep.
And so this is where really the games are won and lost with aggressive decks is how did you play your early game and how well did it match up? And this one, it matched up quite poorly because they had an early loot hoarder and they had the candle shot to go with it. So we're forcing our opponent to have the right tools, but now they've missed that super important flanking strike turn. So without like an explosive trap here, I think that we're in great shape to burn them out of this game. You are at the fundamental heart of hearts, a burn deck with Zoo. And so you want to spend as much time dealing them damage as you possibly can.
I mean, I think the next turn is pretty much, depending on what he does here, which he doesn't have anything more mana to do, is just Chain Gang go face.
Yes, sir.
I like it.
Team deal damage. That's spelled DEEL DAMIJ. Deal damage.
Yeah, definitely Chain Gang here.
Yeah, that's the hardest one for him to make impact against, and it's going to disrupt him in future turns.
And we don't need to clear. We just go face because there's that 2/2 is
That 2 is just going to bump into a 2/3 and not do anything.
Yeah.
That's a 2/2 with no text right now.
It's
So
fine.
see, we could have played around flanking strike by trading out that 2/2, but I don't want to do that. I think that's a foolish play, and I want to deal maximum damage. Same thing. Many things as I can. I want to play as many things as I can and go face. This is a burn deck.
All right. So no life tap.
I think a card like Deathstalker Rexar you are not going to beat. I think we have Solarium in hand to refuel, and I have a
All right.
Soulfire that I'm itching to use.
All right.
So you can make an argument for Soulfire here too. I think you could Flame Imp, heal up Soulfire. But I just want to play as much stuff as I can. I want that Soulfire to point face.
I like it.
Okay. I like
Not
it
too many things here that punish you, I think. Rexar is the big one. I don't think you're going to beat that card. Oh, he's reaching. That scares me.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Didn't think about that one as much, but you know what? I still think we got a good amount of burn going here.
Yeah, I do too.
So I think Fungal Mantle Soulfire, right?
I think I'm plopping that Fungalmancer. I think I'm holding on to the Soulfire.
Okay.
Yeah, because we want to get value out of the Solarium, especially now, right?
Yeah, I think so. It's a pretty weak turn, but they're down at 9 now. Like next turn, if we draw Guard from that Solarium, we got a chance to kill him.
Yep.
It's a lot more aggressive than I usually play, but I like it.
Yeah, this is why I wanted to play Zoo with That's Admirable on the show, because I love your mentality, and Doomguard on 5 every time, just about. It's just that aggressiveness I like.
It's tough to beat a 5/7 charge. It's just really hard to do that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this is tough. I mean, there's a lot of stuff they got. They're really close to turning this corner.
But he doesn't
have
have
a lot of life to work with. All right, so I'm starting with Solarium. Let's giddy up.
Chain Gang, Voidwalker, nothing good.
Ooh, these are some bad tools. Okay, so let's take a minute to think about this now. How do we? Could this board deal them any damage? That's my first question. It looks like it can, but I really want to use this Soulfire, and I really want to draw Doomguard after that. So I want to play the natural Voidwalker. I want to play the Serenite Chain Gang we drew, and then I want to Soulfire him in the face and hope that works. If that doesn't work, it's because of Katharina or Witchwood Grizzly or what have you. And by golly, that'll be good enough.
And we picked the natural because we're going to discard these cards anyways, right?
That's right. I'm not a big fan of Solarium personally, but it does service like a really important feature in that deck.
And now we're in a point of tap Doomguard is lethal.
Doomguard's the card. People play 1, I play 2. Always play 2.
Yep.
If it's
I've seen
metagame,
decks with Leroy, and it's like, why are you afraid to lose cards?
I like the Leroy, but if you're in a metagame where board matters at all, get in there.
That's kind of big. Can he get lethal here though?
They can't get quite lethal here, but they can make some really impactful plays. Like this guy's as good as dead. Doomguard's the only card that matters right now. But if you look, we're 13 cards into the deck. We got 13 cards left in the deck.
Yeah.
Favored to have seen a Doomguard by this point.
So yeah, we're 2 out of 13, and then what? A 2 out of 12 on a tap.
Look how under pressure they've been the whole game. At any point, Doomguard or a board sticking for one more turn when I end this game. So now, last turn. Doomguard or nothing. Good luck. Soulfire, I don't think matters, but let's think about that. Is there any other instant damage in the deck? Life Drinker, Soulfire first.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh.
Tap for the win.
Yes.
Woo!
That's what I'm talking about.
Beautiful.
And that's how we do it here on Hero Power.
Aggression. That's a burn deck at its heart.
Your outs.
It's a burn deck at its heart. And that's what people have forgotten about.
All right.
That was fun.
1-0. We usually play best 2 out of 3 on the show. So let's see how we do.
That's favored. We're already 1-0.
And my client crashed, so I'm getting back in.
Way to go, Zero Shoe.
Yeah.
He just wanted to fight the spectate boss again.
Again. I wish they'd fix that.
This is an interesting matchup now because a lot of these have been Murloc Mage.
Yeah.
For me recently. So I think that 1/3s service like a pretty good facet here. It really hurts the 2/1s they play.
So you're thinking keep the Voidwalker?
I'm thinking about it. We're going first, so it's really important to play something turn 1. And
Yeah.
I think that one can cut, pretty hard into a lot of their plays. I'd probably keep the Voidwalker. I'm not ecstatic about it, but
And that's on turn 2, but not yet, at least. Not Life Drinker's not going to do anything either for a little bit.
well, depending on what they play, you might be on Soulfire. That little stupid 1/2, that's the one I can't let that one live. That 1/2 gets murdery real quick. Okay, so now they didn't do anything. They're probably a slow deck.
You just tap, then.
Yeah, I want to find something good.
That's not good yet.
Yeah, I hate seeing the early Solarium.
It's Elemental Mage.
Pretty clear vision. It's like a big spell mage. Ooh, that one can be quite good. Wait. This is where I want you to start thinking about it because there's so much different stuff that's going on here. Oh boy, this is a tough hand.
First thought is tap and then flame imp depending on what I tap, but that way I can get in there with the fungal enchanter and the
I want that life drinker in play. And I want that light ward in play to deal damage too.
Yeah,
I think I'm playing my 2/1s.
I like it.
And then next turn I'm probably going to Solarium and look for a Happy Ghoul.
So we're hoping he just runs in and pings, right?
Anytime my opponent spends 2 mana doing nothing, I'm pretty happy about that. That may be a Soulfire now. So I want to deal damage. Man, it really sucks to Soulfire that thing, though. Okay, that's good news. So now
the light one can trade in.
Yeah, you got insane play here. So I would use Solarium in this spot because I'm looking for specifically Happy Ghoul.
Yeah. Oh, you would?
Yeah.
Okay.
Next 3 cards aren't going to matter. It matters they're Happy Ghoul. Come on, give us the goods.
Light one's not bad.
Yeah, those cards suck. So now I want to bump the Flame Imp and then play the Fungal Enchanter. And that gives us 3 buffs on our Light Warden.
Oh, and then send in the Void Walker to the face.
Smash him in the face.
Yeah, and those cards we're throwing away actually are beneficial because that's going to thin our deck a bit to get to those kill points. You know, the Doomguard
and we have a real nice Fungal Mancer board next turn too. If it's 6th round.
Don't do the one I'm thinking. Don't do the one I'm thinking. Okay, it's not the one I'm thinking, and I'm happy about that. So now the question is, how do you spread out your board position? I think that the 1 health minion is like quite troublesome for them on like the 3/3. So I'm envisioning how the Fungal Mancer sits. So
go ahead.
Yeah, I want to buff the 3/3 and the 7/2 and smash them in the face.
So we're sending the 5/5 into the taunt and then just hitting it up. Okay.
And I can buff and it buffs the light ward.
That's right.
Oh, because of the heal. Yeah.
A lot of damage here. So this turn, they showed that they did not have Dragon's Fury. Great news, because that means they don't have it again.
Unless they drew it.
You got me. They are very dead if this is their play.
Yep.
Man.
Feels good.
I like your style. Admiral.
Make them have it. If they don't have it, they die.
All right, let's do one more because I want to get that top of rank 4 here. Get to the 3 stars into rank 4 before I give up playing on Zoo.
Now, it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes your opponents do just blow up your stuff. It's not always. But sometimes it is. And you feel great when that happens.
The thing about Zoo is it's really fast when it works.
Well, I think, too, a lot of people tend to play greedy. I know I tend to play greedy. And sometimes you guys just have to make a suboptimal play.
Oh, this hand.
Wow.
Oh
my gosh.
Pitch that away, that Soulfire. We want minions. I want another Happy Ghoul, or I want Prince Keliseth or something.
How about a Prince Keliseth on turn 2?
So is this a turn 1 Flame Imp Coin Voodoo Doctor Happy Ghoul?
Oh,
Easy.
yes. This is the juice. And if you draw a second Happy Ghoul, look out.
Wow.
This guy's megahertz. This will megahertz him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I want to split the 3/2 and the 2/1.
Oh, I didn't.
The reason is a Grievous Bite.
Oh, for the 3 people that run that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you run into the guy who's got it, it's going to hurt. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, see, this is a good example of when you can and cannot trade, right? So obviously we're playing the Keliseth, so just jam that somewhere. It doesn't really matter. And so here's what you do if you want to figure out if you should trade. How much damage happens if you push 8 to face, and then he trades your 3/2, and then next turn you push 5 to face? How much is that?
That's
13.
13.
Okay, so what happens instead if you push 6 to face, and then you trade his 2/1, and then you push 6 to face again?
12.
Full face.
So yeah,
13 is greater than 12.
You know, I never thought of it that way.
It's not always that easy, but that tends to be the way I do it because, again, in my opinion, this is a burn deck. I want to burn them.
Yeah,
So we got punished.
Unleash.
So we got punished because they have Unleash the Hounds. That's very unusual, and that's bad. Like, that is a very punishing effect to us right now. We're both on Keliseth, but we know they have a few more spells than they usually have as well. So this time we did get punished. So that's something to keep in mind. If this swim becomes a popular thing, that's an easy trade on the Voodoo Doctor instead. And so now when you're in the Keleseth battles, what matters the most is getting Keleseth minions developed. So I want to tap here because I want to find more Keleseth minions. Once you get into the Keleseth battle, it's getting more Keleseth minions that makes the difference.
And Warlock has the advantage because we can tap into 2 a turn if we wanted to.
Yep, that's the advantage that Warlock aggressive decks have over the other ones. Ooh, that one's just
more
free.
draw.
Ooh, that one's free.
So we're starting with Kobold Librarian easily.
3-2 and it draws.
And Fungal Mancer. So we're tapping to Light Warden.
So now the question is, what's the best thing that can happen to us? Because you're going to have 2 5-mana plays next turn no matter what. I want to play Light Warden. I want to Soulfire that 3-3 and start hitting him in the face. Because they showed me Unleash the Hounds. So somewhere in my head, I go, wait a minute. What if they have Houndmaster as well? What if they have like their own weird buff play or something like that? In my head, I want to force them into a bad position.
That's probably the best discard there.
I think they both end up pretty good. But, because you have 2 5-drop plays, you know exactly what you're doing next turn.
And see, the Candle Shot would have traded perfectly with the 3-3.
So that play does scare me a little bit. I don't like Spider Bombs. Those spook me.
Yeah.
So I do want to play Fungal Mancer. That one's easy. The question is, where does it go? I think it goes in the Light Warden.
Light Warden and 2-3?
Yeah, so now I'm going to want to trade something here because I really don't want him to Death Rattle Chain that. But let's do some math here because maybe they're just dead. So I'm thinking like the worst thing that happens is like a Zilliax or like a Spider Bomb again or like 2 Play Dead mechanics. And they're going to be struggling after this. So in my head, losing the 4-5 by itself really hurts. And we have so much damage lined up with the Sarnite Chain Gang that I think it's push 6 with the outside minions and then trade the 4-5 in.
That's what I was actually thinking, trading in with the 4-5 as well.
Yeah, this is just to avoid supremely bad things happening.
That's
fine.
That's awesome.
The
Probably the
supremely
best
bad
result.
things
Well, maybe
are like
3-2.
multiple play dead effects, another Spider Bomb, a Zilliax. They're all bad. And Rexar would have been abysmal if we ran into it. But now they've got Rexar, and we've got stuff to keep pushing. So in hindsight, trading the 4-5 might not have been the right call, but I think it balanced it the most across the board. I want a life tap here. I don't want a Solarium because I know exactly what I'm doing. Sarnite Chain Gang, that's the best one.
Gotcha. And getting the Soulfire is really, that's good.
9 + 4, it's 13 right now. So we're 1 damage off killing him. So you're probably ripping that Solarium no matter what next turn.
Yeah, for pull the Doom Guard.
Okay, we don't care about that.
But that doesn't even kill it, so.
No, it kills one of the chain gangs. Oh, it doesn't. No, you're right.
Okay.
It doesn't.
Let's go. Come on, baby.
There's a Doom Guard.
There's a Life Drinker.
So just do the math. 9 + 6. That's enough. That's 15.
Yep.
Easy game.
Wow.
Multiple lethals here.
I just need to start playing Zoo on the ladder and just keep you in my comms.
Missed 2 damage here, by the way. That order.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Lol. There you go. 3-0 with
Man.
Warlock Zoo.
That is aggressive. I love it.
Okay, I need to. I've been playing this like old school Zoo, where it's kind of mid rangey and. No,
Just need to go get
not
it.
anymore.
Just
Get it.
Go.
Burn deck. It is a burn deck.
Pedal to the metal. Just go,
I like
go,
it.
go.
That's one of the hardest things about learning any new deck, in my opinion, or even playing one that you've seen a lot of other people do. It's hard as someone who streams to be able to explain every single thought that's going through their head all the time with, enthusiasm. Nonetheless, being able to identify what a deck's game plan is honestly, it's quite difficult. Like, sure, get minions and kill them, but why is it get minions and kill them? Is it because it's a burn deck? Is it because I need to synergize with something? Is it a big combo turn I'm putting together? Fungal Mancer, I think, gives a lot of the wrong idea of how the deck is supposed to play out sometimes. You look at it and you go, this is a great opportunity to crush my opponent's board and be left with something myself. But sometimes it's a great opportunity to just hit him in the face. That's going to change from matchup to matchup, and it's going to change from context as well. But in my opinion, the biggest mistake I see people make with this deck is overtrading. They overtrade all the time. They don't want the disaster things to happen to them. And it's just really the question is, what's a disaster? If your opponent's trading your stuff 1-for-1, that's not really a disaster. It's when your opponent can leverage and get a big tempo swing. That's the disaster. That's how you lose Hearthstone games. Your opponent grabs tempo and you don't get it back.
Yeah, watching your stream today with Purple, one thing that resonated with me is don't always assume that your opponent's going to make the perfect right play every time. They might just be bad at Hearthstone or don't know the matchup,
or they're hungry or they're on the bus station or whatever. Like,
if you
people
just
play for different reasons.
Maximize your potential damage each turn, or maximize your it's not always about spending all your mana. It's not always about doing what's the quote unquote right play. You just do what's right at that moment, and 9 times out of 10 you win.
Just about understanding the game plan going forward. Don't be afraid to lose. You're going to lose games no matter what.
All right. Well, guys, that's going to do it for us this week. Again, thank you so much to Admirable. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come hang out with us and show us the proper way to go face.
It's always a pleasure.
So, again, if you want to follow him anywhere on social media except Instagram, it's ThatsAdmirable.
That's right. Instagram is It's Admirable.
So go give him a follow. Great content. As Zerosia was saying, great stream. Great way to learn more about the game. If you have any questions or comments about our show or about this deck that we played tonight, please send us an email at heropowerpodcast@gmail.com. We love to hear from you, the community. We love to interact with you guys and just have a conversation about Hearthstone. We love to talk about Hearthstone. It's what we do. If you haven't done so already, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button below on YouTube. Give us a follow on Twitch to be alerted when we go live. And if you are interested in our patron-only Discord, you can find out more details about that over at patreon.com/heropower. And until next week, good gaming. Bye, guys.
Stop copying me.